Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to go my review of AEW's Collision Grand Slam. Starting off the evening, we have a Saraya Rules match. It is Jamie Hayter versus Saraya. I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between Hayter and Saraya, with Hayter keeping the pace of the match. Saraya then hits Hayter with a VCR, takes out Hayter. Saraya then hits Hayter with a chair shot, sending Hayter and Harley Cameron through a table on the outside. Hayter then gets up, throws Saraya through a table. Hayter then hits a tombstone piledriver on Saraya, and then Hayter ultimately hits a devastating lariat on Saraya, pins her for the 3, and your winner of the match is Jamie Hayter. Hats off to Jamie Hayter for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a Trios Tornado Tag match. It is the Learning Tree versus the Conglomeration. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Orange Cassidy hitting Jericho with a backpack. Orange Cassidy then hits a Stundog Millionaire. The Conglomeration were keeping the pace of the match, with Jericho hitting a Death Valley driver on Mark Briscoe using a chair. Jericho then hits a Code Breaker using a chair on Mark Briscoe as well. Orange then hits an Orange Punch on Big Bill. Briscoe then hits a Senton to the outside, as well as a J Drilla. Bill, though, hits a choke slam through a table on Mark Briscoe, pins him for the 3, and your winners of the match are the Learning Tree. Hats off to the Learning Tree for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Action Andretti versus Brody King. I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between Andretti and King, with Andretti hitting a running shooting star press on King in the middle of the ring. King, though, was keeping the pace of the match, with King hitting a senton on Action Andretti. Pins for the 3, and your winners of the match, or winner of the match, is Brody King. After the match, the Rajas come out to the ring and they attack Top Flight. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Jack Perry's Open Challenge match, and the person that answers that Open Challenge is none other than Minoru Suzuki. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Perry and Suzuki, with Suzuki keeping the pace of the match. Perry and Suzuki both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Suzuki hitting Perry with a chair shot. Perry then hits a DDT off the apron on Suzuki, as well as a running knee. Referee then counts to 10, and your winner of the match due to countout is Jack Perry. After the match, Perry attacks Suzuki, but Shibata comes out to the ring to save Minoru Suzuki. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Yuta, Claudio, and Pac versus Private Party and the Commander. I thought it was a good match, back and forth matchup. Yuta and Claudio and Pac were keeping the pace of the match, with Claudio hitting a giant swing in the middle of the ring. Yuta then refuses to help Pac and Claudio, but Yuta pretty much snaps after he's been slapped by Isaiah Cassidy, which Yuta ultimately hits the finish. Referee sounds for the bell, and your winners of the match are Yuta, Claudio, and Pac. Hats off to Yuta, Claudio, and Pac for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a triple threat matchup. It is Hologram versus Dralistico versus Mortos. I thought it was a good match, back and forth matchup, with Dralistico keeping the pace of the match. Dralistico then hits a Hurricane Rana off the top, taking out Mortis. Hologram then hits a Poison Rana on Mortis in the middle of the ring. Dralistico then hits a Springboard Destroyer on Hologram, but Hologram ultimately hits a roll-up, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Hologram. After the match, Roosh comes out to the ring. Roosh then embraces Mortos, and it looks like Roosh has added Mortos to his LFI stable. Definitely intriguing stuff there, adding Mortos to the LFI. Moving on from that, we have an M&M collection segment. I thought this segment was absolutely awful. It looks like Mansoor stole Max Caster's jacket. Mansoor then says that they want to redo Max's jacket. M&M then have a fashion show, and then they reveal a new jacket for Max Caster, but Billy Gunn attacks M&M, and then the Acclaimed come out to the ring to attack M&M as well. Looks like there's some unfinished business there between the Acclaimed and M&M. Moving on from that, we have a Lumberjack strap match. It is Jeff Jarrett versus Adam Page. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Jarrett and Page, with Jarrett and Page both exchanging in the middle of the ring. Page hits a fallaway Sam, as well as keeping the pace of the match. Page hits a Death Valley driver for a near fall. Then there were some TV issues with TNT, which I thought was kind of ironic and kind of weird. Karen Jarrett then comes out to the ring. She tries to help Jeff Jarrett. Jarrett hits Page with a strap. Karen then attacks Page. Page hits a low blow on Jarrett, which allowed Page to hit a dead eye on Jarrett. Pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Adam Page. Hats off to Adam Page for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a Continental title eliminator matchup. It is the main event of AEW's Grand Slam Collision. It was a good match between Okada and Guevara. Back and forth matchup with Okada keeping the pace of the match. Guevara hits a cutter. Okada then hits an elbow drop off the top rope. Okada then goes for a Rainmaker, but Guevara counters it with a Spanish Fly. Guevara hits a GTH, but Okada hits another Rainmaker on Guevara, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Okada. A couple of things I want to say about Collision quickly, man, before I get out of here. Was Collision a disappointment? Yeah. And some of you guys may be asking me, why have I not covered Collision? This is exactly the reason why I don't cover Collision. Collision, to me, I wouldn't even say Collision is the B show, man. At this point, I don't think AEW genuinely has a B show. I've said this from the very beginning when it pertains to Collision. Collision, unfortunately, has took a immense dive ever since AEW lost CM Punk. That show was created and pretty much put together, if you will, around CM Punk, especially with the hostility they had at one time between Punk and the Elite. And this was the best way to separate the two and have CM Punk have his own show. Unfortunately, that's backfired. CM Punk is now with WWE. He's been in high-profile matches with Drew McIntyre. He's having a hell of a career for himself over in WWE. Unfortunately for Collision, it's took a immense backseat. Even with Grand Slam, the way that Grand Slam played out, I don't think Grand Slam Dynamite was that bad. Collision was awful. I think that the most impactful match was Page versus Jarrett, which is saying a lot for both Page and Jarrett. But I'm going to be honest, man. I think with Collision, I just think it's on a downward spin, man, to be honest with you. I know they brought in Adam Copeland to kind of revamp, the brand, if you will, for Collision. But unfortunately, it's a tall tale task for Copeland, especially due to the fact that, right now he's injured. And that's a lot of weight to put on Copeland's shoulders when, Copeland eventually is going to retire. He's looking for his way out, and I don't think he signed a very long-term deal with AEW. Now, will they extend it? I don't know, which I will talk about here in a second when it pertains to Rey Fenix and Penta. But as far as Collision, man, I just think Collision, to me, it's not the B show for AEW. I don't know what you would call it or categorize it as, but it's just not the B show. A lot of the storylines that you see on Collision do not pretty much go through Dynamite, and vice versa. Collision is its own entity, but unfortunately with that entity, it's not. The ratings for Collision are just in the toilet, man. It's the same thing with Rampage. I know that there's been a lot of speculation, and I know Swerve recently put out a tweet, stating that, AEW was going over to Fox, and I know that Tony Khan had filed a trademark for AEW Shockwave, which could possibly be the new show going over to the Fox network. I'm going to be honest, man. I know some people are like, oh, this cancel Rampage. I would probably cancel Collision as well. Collision just is not it. It's not, man. The storyline, there's no storylines at all for either Dynamite or Collision, which I will give Collision that, but there's nothing that's on Collision that bleeds into pay-per-views really, nor does it really bleed into Dynamite. It's not a continuous story, and AEW has a really hard time telling a story that continues and intensifies over time. And I said this last week with the Bloodline. You look at the Bloodline storyline, that storyline's been going on for 3 damn years, and it's progressively got better with, WWE adding small ingredients here and there to build up on the Bloodline, especially bringing in someone like Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, bringing in those 3 vital pieces to the Bloodline was a immense deal for WWE, especially the Bloodline storyline. So, Tony Khan has a hard time, creating storylines, let alone putting ingredients to make that story, flourish, and he just doesn't do that. To me, if I was Tony Khan, if they are bringing in Shockwave, and they're going to Fox, that's great. And yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that Collision is going to be scrapped. I would say Rampage is probably going to be scrapped more than Collision. But there's just no storytelling on Collision, man. It's really hard to watch Collision, to be honest with you. And to be honest with you, and this is going to be a hot take for a lot of people, and probably including myself, but I'm just going to say it anyway. If you look at what NXT's doing right now, obviously they're going to be on the CW network, I believe, tomorrow. You got CM Punk being a special guest referee, I believe, for a Roxanne Perez title matchup between Perez and Julia. It's a high-profile matchup, man, and obviously, them going to a new network and being live and everything else like that, it's a big deal for NXT. And I think NXT, if you put NXT up against Collision, I think NXT would beat Collision every single week on the ratings, to be honest with you, especially with what NXT's doing now and working with TNA and what they brought to the table so far. Yeah, Obviously, it wasn't going to pan out too well between NXT and Dynamite, but I think if it was NXT versus Collision, I think NXT would have beat Collision hands down. I think the ratings are better than Collision. And right now, with this, the storylines and the build they have for NXT, and the fact that NXT is working with another company, is a way bigger deal and has more eyes invested in NXT than it does Collision. And that's saying a lot, because obviously NXT is not what it used to be with the Black and Gold brand. But, Shawn Michaels and what he's doing over there with NXT, he's revamping that show. So, I mean, like I said, long story short, I mean, if NXT was going head-to-head with Collision, I don't think we would really have Collision around as much as we do now. So, to me, I think, all in all, I think Collision Grand Slam on Saturday was just a immense letdown, to be honest with you. But the other thing I want to talk about quickly, man, because we are talking about AEW, is the Rey Fenix and Penta story that's been going on and it's been circulating for the past few days pertaining to the Lucha Bros going over to WWE. It seems to me that that's not going to happen anytime soon. For what I've heard and what I've been told, and the people that I talk to, it seems like the Lucha Bros, especially Rey Fenix, is going to be sticking around with AEW for probably almost a year. It came out the other day, and like I said, for the people that I talked to, that Tony Khan's going to extend the contract for Rey Fenix. And it's not a contract extension. It's not them re-signing. It's more or less on the line because of the amount of days or months that Fenix was out with injury. Tony Khan's added that time back onto his contract, and he has to, work those dates. And those dates are going to pretty much take Fenix and Penta almost into a year until they can actually leave AEW. Now, a lot of people are okay with this. Some people are pissed off with this. To be honest with you, I'm on the boat with people being pissed off for an immense amount of reasons. Number one, this is a Vince McMahon move right here from Tony Khan. The fact that he is putting on time onto Rey Fenix's contract, not allowing these guys to leave AEW to go over WWE, I think it's petty, man. I think it's absolutely petty. And I can understand it's a business. I understand the fact that, it's a petty move, but I also understand that it's business. And obviously Tony Khan wants to get his money's worth out of the Lucha Bros and put on some good matches, if you want to call it that, for the Lucha Bros. Do I still believe that Penta and Fenix are going to WWE? Absolutely. I don't think Penta, and I stated this the last time when I told you guys about Penta and Fenix going to WWE. That deal is pretty much almost done. I think Fenix is obviously going to ride out the rest of his contract that he has, with obviously taking time off with medical stuff and all that stuff. But the Lucha Bros are gone, bro. There's nothing else more for Penta and Fenix to do in AEW. The tag team division is depleting, and there really isn't a tag team division. The tag team division of what it once was to what it is now is night and day, man. I mean, it's immensely different from what it once was to what it is now. There is no tag team division right now. The Young Bucks have pretty much held that whole tag team division hostage. You know what I mean? And they're pretty much controlling that entire tag team division, which is also, a huge issue with AEW right now as a whole. But yeah, to me, from what I understand, Penta and Fenix are not leaving. I think by the time Fenix's contract's up with AEW, it's going to be roughly almost around a year until they're actually available to actually go over to WWE. So they are, unfortunately, going to have to pump the brakes on them going over to WWE, which is, it's a letdown. Obviously WWE wanted to bring in, Penta and Fenix, and I think they'll be a great addition to the main roster. And the tag team division is doing a little bit better than what AEW is bringing to the table right now. But I do think this was a Vince move from Tony Khan. I do. And it does beg the question with other so-called talent that's on AEW, is he going to add more time to their contracts with them being out with injury? You look at someone like Adam Cole, you look at someone like Wardlow, you look at someone like Ricky Starks, you look at someone like Miro. Are they is he going to add more time on their contract because they're injured or not willing to work because they're not getting creative ideas? I mean, there's a lot to think about. You look, like I said, you look at someone like Adam Cole. Cole's been out for quite a while. Are they going to add more time on his contract? You look at Adam Copeland. Are they going to add more time to his contract depending on how long it's been since he's been out? So, I mean, or Keith Lee. Keith Lee has been out for quite a while. So, I mean, if you look at that narrative alone, just with what he's doing with Fenix and Penta, it does beg the question that, is he going to extend these contracts for certain people that have been out with injury to keep them kind of, stranglehold, if you will, with AEW? Because I'm going to tell you guys right now, man, there is going to be a lot of conversations coming down the pike with AEW talent that might go over to WWE, or former WWE talent that want to go back over to the E. I know WWE is really interested in bringing back Malachi Black, and to be honest with you guys, I would not blame Aleister Black or Malachi Black if he wants to go back to the E, to be honest with you, man, because like I told you guys before, man, they're not really doing a whole lot with the House of Black. I mean, you got Brody King versus Action Andretti. They're not doing a whole hell of a lot with them, and I don't count Rampage. I really don't. It's not primetime television. You know, it's at the 10 o'clock hour. Nobody really gives a shit about Rampage. You know, the House of Black are not really being showcased like they should. Malachi Black should have been a TNT champion, multiple-time champion, multiple tag team champions, trios champions, and that's just not in the cards right now for the House of Black because Tony Khan doesn't really know how to book the House of Black. And unfortunately, with that entire stable, I still believe to this day the biggest MVP out of that stable was Julia Hart. She was able to stay with that stable and then make a run with the TBS title and had a hell of a run until she got hurt. So, I mean, you just got to look at the narrative, man, and where he's going to push certain people. And, you know, I had this conversation the other day with my wife, and I said, you know, she asked me, she's like, why are they not building AEW talent? I said, the problem with AEW, in my honest opinion, if you look at storylines and high-profile matches, a lot of the matches are either AEW originals versus most likely former WWE talent. I mean, if you even look at Adam Page versus Swerve, Swerve's a former WWE talent. You know, and yeah, he's doing great things in AEW. I mean, tremendous job. I have a lot of praise for Swerve. Swerve is a hell of an athlete, hell of a wrestler. But if you look at, you know, primetime storylines, it's a lot of it's former, you know, AEW originals versus former WWE talent. For a prime example, you got Will Ospreay versus Ricochet coming up this Wednesday on Dynamite for their 5th anniversary for AEW. Well, if you look at the narrative of that, it is Will Ospreay versus a former WWE talent in Ricochet. You know what I mean? So they're not, Tony Khan doesn't know how to build the original talent that he has brought in to build this show. It does not happen. You know, and unfortunately it takes a back seat. I think a lot of the wrestlers that were even brought in to AEW from whether it was New Japan or, you know, WWE, it stifled them. I mean, if you look at Sasha Banks, I mean, compared to her run in WWE, it is night and day, man. I feel like Monet's career as a whole has took a immense decline coming over to AEW. I mean, she was on the shelf when she came in, I think it was March 13th at the TD Garden. She didn't even have a single damn match, and then her first match was a title shot against Willow. So, I mean, you know, and she was still injured. You know, compared to what she did in WWE, it's vastly different. You know, you look at someone like Okada, which Okada is an absolute legend, you know, future Hall of Famer, and he's a big time name for the fans and all the fans over in Japan and wrestling for New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's a huge name for them. He comes over to AEW, and it's not the same Okada. You know, it's not. And some have prospered from it. I mean, you look at Will Ospreay. Ospreay's done a hell of a job since he's been with AEW, and AEW has a lot of faith, obviously, in Will Ospreay. But some of the talent that's come over from even WWE has not panned out. I mean, you look at Andrade, his career has gone down a lot in AEW. And then you look what he's done in WWE, he's having high-profile matches with Carmelo Hayes. And it looks like he's going to be in a primary storyline with LA Knight. So, I mean, and LA Knight's the current U.S. champion. So, I mean, my thing is, it's like, dude, you're not building stories, man. You're really not. And a lot of the things in AEW right now, it's the well's running dry. I mean, if you look at Jericho, it's the same damn thing. And I mentioned this multiple times about Jericho, that the Learning Tree storyline or whatever the hell that is just not working. It's not working. And you can say, oh, well, Jericho's here to put over the younger talent. Well, okay. But if you look at the talent they just faced off at Collision, that's not really younger talent. Briscoe's been around for quite a while. You know what I mean? Kyle O'Reilly's been around for a while. Orange Cassidy's been around for a little while. So it's not, you know, and Jericho's trying to replay the storyline that he had with Orange Cassidy when Orange Cassidy destroyed his jacket like 4 years ago. So, I mean, it's like, dude, like, Jericho's career is coming to an end. It's the same thing that I have my issues with Jarrett. It's not, you know, I don't hate Jarrett entirely, but unfortunately with Jarrett, my issue with him is that he needs to have more of a backstage role than be on television. You're taking away time from the former talent or current talents on the AEW roster that is still young, still ready to go, and still ready to have TV time, like someone like Ricky Starks or someone like Miro. You know what I mean? Like, that's my biggest downfall with Jarrett. Jarrett's career is done. There's nothing else more Jarrett can do that's going to be like, oh my God, that's Jeff Jarrett. He just won the world championship. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if Jarrett ever won the AEW title or TNT title, AEW fucked up. I'm letting y'all know that now. And hopefully, you know, AEW can really, you know, especially Tony Khan, man, he can really hopefully try to figure this shit out, because, you know, even adding another show like Shockwave, and let's say hypothetically they don't cancel Rampage or Collision, they add a fourth show into the mix of AEW. That's a immense undertaking already for what he's already dealing with. And you're looking at Ring of Honor, you're looking at Dynamite, you're looking at Collision, you're looking at Rampage, and now possibly Shockwave. That's a immense undertaking to have, man. That's a lot of shit on his plate. And unfortunately, it's going to stifle a lot of these shows. So, we're going to see what happens, man. It's the same thing when, MVP showed up at Dynamite Grand Slam. Everybody was excited, including myself. But the biggest thing with that is where are you going to put MVP, Bobby Lashley, and Shelton Benjamin into the fold of AEW? Because right now the roster is just chaotic. It's chaos. There's no storylines being built. And it's, storylines are a big key in pro wrestling. And when you don't have that, it's, like I told you guys before, it's what we're getting with All Japan Pro Wrestling, which they put on banger matches. And it's more tournament-based, and may the best man win, which a lot of people might like that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we don't need it every single time. We need to know the when, the where, and the how. And we're a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, we're not getting that with AEW. And again, it's a prime example with Collision, man. It's just like they threw a bunch of shit together and was like, here you go. Like I said, the best match on Collision's Grand Slam, to me, was Jarrett versus Adam Page, hands down. You know what I mean? There really wasn't a whole lot of news or high-profile matches coming out of Collision Grand Slam this past weekend. So, again, man, Collision is just, it ain't it. And it's not firing all cylinders for me. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Collision Grand Slam. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.